Welcome to another episode of Uncommon Entrepreneurs. I am Drew Cutcomb, and today I have a very special guest, Mariah Vitoria. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Drew.
Yeah, you're in sunny California?
Yes, very, very sunny California. I'm in the Central Valley, so I'm not enjoying like the coast 80-degree weather. It's more of like over 100 over here.
Nice. So just to give some perspective, if you're tuning in for the first time, Uncommon Entrepreneurs was founded down here in Puerto Rico last year, 2019, as a networking organization, bringing together some of the top thinkers and entrepreneurs and doers in the space down here, local Puerto Ricans, those that have relocated down here for Act 2022 and for other purposes and reasons, those that are just of a similar mindset. And so what our intention is with these interviews is to highlight some of these successful entrepreneurs that are outside the box thinkers, that are in different industries, to ignite you as we go through this global reset and the business world changes forever, that we have these fresh ideas of how people are taking advantage and moving forward and overcoming and not shrinking, but going up. As we go from this process. So we have these on a weekly basis, and if you have suggestions, this is a community-led event. If you're off the island in Puerto Rico, you're still invited. I mean, the ideas are going to be just as fresh wherever you're at in the world. Today, again, we have Mariah Vitoria, who is a YouTuber, crypto investor, best-selling author, former professional sweepstaker, game show contestant, and food truck owner. At 20, she decided to walk away from the broken college system to start her entrepreneurial journey. During her time as a food truck owner, she was featured on the hit series on TV, Carnival Eats, twice with original creations. Mariah has won over $500,000 of prizes from online sweepstakes and game shows. Now Mariah shares tips and experiences about fasting for longevity through her YouTube videos, where she documented fasting for 54 days. Welcome.
Thanks, Drew. I'm excited to be here today.
Yeah, appreciate you being here. So you, from what I gather, just to fill people in, I mean, there was quite a bit of background of different steps. Maybe where did you start in your entrepreneurial journey and kind of get us up to today?
Yeah, so I would say my entrepreneurial journey started at 15 I loved playing sports growing up. Basketball was my favorite sport. I didn't want to be average, so I asked my parents, can I go to this basketball camp this summer for $500? And they kind of laughed in my face and were like, absolutely not. And so I started out by literally collecting recyclables. I was kind of a dumpster diver for a very short period of time. I realized this is going to take way too long to get to 500. I started doing radio contests. So I was winning concert tickets, Disneyland tickets, all kinds of signed memorabilia, and I was selling it all on Craigslist. So I quickly made the 500. I was on my way to basketball camp, and that kind of started my journey of doing radio contests. And then I moved on to online sweepstakes, and that's where like the big prizes were. So it was trips to the Grammys, $10,000 prizes, cars, trips around the world. So I got into that, and I wouldn't say lucky, but there was definitely some luck involved. I kind of figured out some strategies. And I would just spend 16 hours a day entering these sweepstakes. So at the time, I was in college, and I was studying business with a concentration in strategy and entrepreneurship. Kind of looked around at my professors. I'm like, what am I doing here? And none of you have businesses or have had businesses. How can you teach me how to be an entrepreneur? So I made the choice to drop out of college. Everyone around me told me, that's dumb. This is a very stupid choice. You're going to regret this. But I said, you know what? I know I'm going to start a business. I don't know what yet, but I'm going to figure it out. So I had saved about $100,000 from, had won 5 cars and sold all of them. And I decided to start a mini donut business. So I did that for a short period of time. I realized, hey, this is a hobby. This is not a business. How can I turn this into a business? So I took all the money that I saved. I bought a food truck, and then I started traveling to fairs and festivals all across California. Then I had created 2 things, a funnel cake bacon cheeseburger and an ice cream donut sandwich, which were both featured on the Carnival Eats show you mentioned earlier. And I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed, being an employer, employing people, learning how to lead people in a different way. And After some time, I realized how challenging it was going to be to scale the food truck business in the fair and festival sector. So every year during my off season, I would try things like writing a book or different investment opportunities. And one off season, my friend introduced Bitcoin to me. And so, unfortunately, she did introduce it to me through one of the mini Ponzi schemes that many of us in crypto know of. And so that was kind of my intro to crypto, but I soon realized that I should just own the actual asset myself. So I started buying crypto, and it was a very risky choice, but it was a December, I want to say 2016, where I was just looking at the price of Ethereum. It had dropped from like $13 to $7. And it was pretty risky just because December is a time of the concession business where you have no revenue. And I decided, you know what, I'm just going to empty my savings account and I'm going to buy as much Ethereum as I possibly can. And so I did that. And then soon after that, I started traveling a lot. I caught the travel bug and I realized that that wasn't going to really align with owning a concession business. So crypto had gone up quite a bit after that. And I, had some wiggle room to sell my concession business, travel a little bit, live off my crypto gains as a transition moment to find something else that I was passionate about and I wanted to do. So I sold my concession business after about 4 or 5 years of doing that. And after I caught the travel bug, I learned about Puerto Rico and the opportunity there and the crypto scene that was developing. So it's been 2 years. I moved to Puerto Rico and I'm currently now running a YouTube channel where I share my fasting experiences. Like you mentioned earlier, I have done the experiment of fasting and seeing how long it took me to get hungry. That took 54 days. But the real learning came after the fast. So I now continue to share with people the experience after fasting and what that's like.
That's great. Wow, that's quite the journey that you've been on and of innovating and so forth. I can relate on the college front where you go to school. I went for 2 years myself and also had the entrepreneurial bug and was looking around, and it's almost verbatim conclusion that you came to, right? We must have took the red pill or something like that. So great. There's a lot to unpackage there. Maybe what were some of the lessons that you've learned with the food truck or kind of your earlier entrepreneurial ventures that have kind of set you up to what you're doing now, which is to me more kind of passive, and you're, building something that is more evergreen with YouTube and something it seems you're passionate about. What kind of was that, the first leg of your entrepreneurial journey, and what did it teach you and all that?
Yeah, it taught me a lot. It helped me to ask myself better questions before I want to start a business, right? So when I started that business, I did zero research. It was literally an idea that started in the morning, and by the evening, I had bought, my first tent setup to sell mini donuts. So, it really helped me understand, ask myself questions before ever getting involved in a business and just better vet it and do my due diligence. So, for example, a question I always like to ask myself is, what does the road look like to 1 million? Like the scalability aspect of it. Taught me a lot about that. Taught me a lot about, having employees and how to train employees and the challenge of that. I think what was one of the best things that having a food truck taught me was it's always my fault, no matter what happens. With my employees, if they mess up, yeah, it's always my fault. And that really helped me just take responsibility and control and apply that specifically to everything else that I do.
That's great. Yeah. And that food truck business is more, you just go to a fair, and so it's just highly concentrated over a short period of time, and then you have a bunch of time. That's what you were kind of alluding to earlier?
Yeah, so the season was like 5 to 6 months, depending on exactly what you do. So you have a very short period of time to make, revenue for the entire year. It's seasonal, so there's a huge challenging aspect to that as well. The scalability can be challenging because, it's in-person business. It's only running when you're actually there, when your doors are open versus, online businesses, for example.
Got it. Yep. Makes a lot of sense. So kind of switching to your sweepstake. I mean, what a sweepstaking, profession I've never heard that before. And I know you've wrote an ebook on it that we can put in the link notes that people can kind of check out too, that you've, mastered it and now can teach it. So maybe give us some insight, like how that worked. It seems like to most people, I'm sure out there, it's like a lottery. Like how could somebody have $500,000 in winnings and cars? And so fill us in.
Yeah, so a lot of sweepstakes are in a lottery format. You enter your name, your email address, it goes into a drawing, and someone is randomly selected. So what I realized was there was also this other sector of sweepstakes that they would usually call them creative sweepstakes or contests. And instead of just submitting your name and your email, you would have to submit a photo or an essay or create a video that was almost like advertising a certain brand. And when it came to those, if they were selected at random, people are less likely to take the time to take the photo or write the essay. So my odds were already better. But then there was also the aspect of judges being involved. So what I quickly learned was judges liked two things that won me the majority of my sweepstakes. And one was if there was writing involved, creating, instead of writing just an essay, I would write like a rhyming poem and add a bunch of humor to it. And that seemed to always go over really well with the judges. And the second thing I did was I would create these videos where if it was like a brand, so for example, I had a cousin and I got him on the Rachel Ray show. So he had to make a video about a recipe with Uncle Ben's rice. So I made like this huge, like 4 foot tall, fake box of rice that had the logo on it. And those always seem to go over really well. I also just have a lot of family and friends. So there was the voting aspect of it that really helped carry me through, like all the ones that included voting.
That's great. Interesting. That makes sense. When it really comes down to the creativity, and I'm sure you're, attempting multiple at bats to get, something, but it only takes one to hit for the justification to be there, especially when you're, at that age when, that goes really far. That's cool. Very outside the box thinking. So maybe switching to, so you drop out of college. However, I get the sense that you're like an avid learner and, that you like, so how, like, did your education stop? Like, are you happy with that decision? Like, how do you, maybe people out there that are kind of a similar mindset, give them some thoughts on your learning styles.
Yeah, so one thing that I thought was really unique about my decision to drop out of college was the decision always felt right. And I was never nervous about it. I never had that sick feeling in my stomach. It felt right even when people were telling me it was the wrong thing to do. It was an overwhelming feeling in my body, that like intuition that it was like, this is the right thing to do. And so that was something that was really important to me. I had some wiggle room because I had, that the revenue I was creating through the sweepstakes. So I kind of had that to fall back on. And when I dropped out of college, I was like, I know that I can make a sustained income with sweepstaking. So I had that, always in the back of my mind, but with the idea of wanting to start a business. And so I think that people just need to ask themselves the right questions when it comes to if college is the right thing for you. For me, I'm all about time and efficiency, and the 4-year model just didn't seem right for me in any way, shape, or form. So it just overwhelming felt like the right thing to do. And it's so easy to get caught up in, what your parents want you to do. But for me, at that age, I was, 19, I had already taken on financial responsibility for my life. And so my parents weren't paying for it. So I put myself in a position where I had full control over the decision that I could make.
That's great. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And, you had that backup and, outside the box thinking, right? Have you always been kind of like a divergent thinker, kind of outside the box, or has there been some kind of tools you've learned? Because that to me is one of the most, like, you're describing the definition of an entrepreneur in the way that you've like creatively made things work, right? So as that came naturally, or how did you have mentors? How did you kind of foster that?
I would say I always think in a way of trying to find the loophole. and things. Like that's how I looked at a sweepstakes. I would read these, 8 pages of official rules written by lawyers and figure out, okay, where are the loopholes here? Where can I leverage what I know to give myself a better shot at this? And when it came to learning, yes, I've always been an avid learner. Luckily, I kind of just fell in love with learning when I was about to drop out of college, and that really opened up my eyes to just learning about a lot of things, exposing myself to more. So yeah, and even looking back when I was, like 10, 11, I was, already showing signs of being an entrepreneur. But for me, the hard part is, when you're in school, they always say, you're going to go up and be a teacher or, a banker or a firefighter or a police officer. And it's really sad that they just don't give kids the options of owning your own business and being an entrepreneur. So that's something that I wish is, just talked about more to young kids. That's something that I always try to do is when kids talk about what they want to be when they grow up, just give them that option and have them really think outside of the box and all of the possibilities.
It's great. We definitely relate on that category. It's the foundation of our economy in our capitalistic society and the best tax incentives. But yet they don't teach you in my 18 years of Minneapolis public schools anything. And I didn't even know an entrepreneur. And so you have to fumble on Rich Dad, Poor Dad to get your appetite wet and, get down this rabbit hole of active and passive income and all that. So I get it. We're on the same page. So switching to Puerto Rico, right? You're physically in California, but you spend a lot of time down here and so forth, like myself. So what brought you here? What do you think about it? Just fill people in that are curious about. You moved from California to Puerto Rico?
Yeah, so it was, right after I sold my business and I was just looking for a change. I was looking for a new opportunity to grow. And as I was doing, research about different places and being super involved in crypto, I actually came across Sean King's Steam It post, which really gave me the push. And hearing someone else's experience to make that move to Puerto Rico. So I traveled for 3 weeks, and honestly, I wasn't super in love. It was not love at first sight for me. And it got to the point where I was there after 2 weeks, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to force myself to move here, whether I like it or not. I just felt like I was pushing myself underneath it all. And so after 2 weeks, it quickly felt like home. So I went 3 weeks to visit. I went home back to California, 6 days, packed my bags, and went straight back to Puerto Rico to start living there. And it quickly felt like a home. I quickly felt challenged. I mean, the caliber of people in Puerto Rico is just absolutely mind-blowing. And I just found myself in a lot of situations where I was just sitting back and not talking much and just absorbing from all the knowledge and the wisdom from the amazing entrepreneurs that are in Puerto Rico. So yes, at first glance, it was the tax incentives that made Puerto Rico appealing. But what has made me stay over time is the people, the culture. It's just, for someone that loves to be outside all day, there's really no place I'd rather be. I'm actually really missing the ocean water and the humidity right now, as funny as that sounds. So yeah, Puerto Rico is just such a unique place. But I also believe that it's not for everyone, but if you're someone that is open, can easily pivot, then it's definitely a place that you have to check out.
That's great. Yeah, I think we relate on multiple fronts on that angle. And the people down here, which is why Uncommon Entrepreneurs was even founded. It's just this Gulch type, just connection of just outside the box thinkers that have mastered different skills. And, there's just power in masterminding and who you're around and, it's the 5 people you're around and how they influence you type mindset. And so they're kind of everywhere down here. So amazing. Let's switch. Let's jump into crypto, right? That's a hot topic. And for those that are tuning in, share, subscribe, write down in notes different themes you want to hear and so forth as we go through this. So you gave a little bit of perspective of how you got into the space. Let's maybe talk on the theme of what gets you excited about it. Why do you go around, promoting and help people, get signed up? Do you see it long term?
Absolutely. With crypto, kind of similar, because I always, for me, intuition is it's like a body experience before it's a mind experience. And with my, for example, my decision with college and it just feeling so right, I've always felt that way about crypto. And I truly have really never doubted it once. And for me, what it's really fun about crypto is that a lot of people that are in the space are very alike in terms of we're all like so rebellious, and that just makes me so happy. And I see the type of people that are in it, and for me, there's just so much freedom within crypto, freedom and security when it comes to managing my own assets. And what I learned in the first run up of crypto is that it's a really exciting space to be in, but it's more exciting when your friends are also involved. So that really motivated me to just spread the good news of crypto, teach people how to start buying Bitcoin for the first time, how to store it safely, how to kind of look at a chart a little bit. I'm no expert when it comes to charts, but I know a little bit here and there. And so it's been really fun, that experience of getting other people involved and sharing with them just the whole freedom aspect, because, I do get terrified of the monetary system, how broken it truly is, and how someone's wealth can really just be washed out over a very short period of time with hyperinflation. So, I have obviously concerns around that, and that's what led me to crypto.
Yeah, I get it. And I think we're similar in thinking in that way. It's better to, it's a term that I use to describe myself at times as a crypto evangelist, that idea of, and when we talked yesterday, and if I think we're on the same page. It's just this idea. It's just, the internet solved, the transfer of information with, Google, and just you can search for anything versus a library, if you remember what that was, right, 20, 30 years ago. And, what blockchain and crypto is solving is, the transferring of money more conveniently. And so, yeah, I think it's the, underlying technology that, because you got in with the hot run up, and, we all know at that moment, there were a lot of people that came and a lot of people that went, and you could see their level of belief. But it sounds like you're saying it's more of like a fundamental value than it is just like the technical trading and, the impact. Are we on the same page?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I truly believe in it long term. And, I walk the talk. I mean, I have the majority of my portfolio is cryptocurrency. So it's something that I will have always stood by, and I don't really see that ever changing. So, I'm excited about what's to come with crypto. People are always asking me the price, and for me, I'm very patient when it comes to the price, but I think that the next year or two is going to be quite interesting. Obviously Bitcoin was born out of the last financial crisis, so it's time to shine. I think the true test of Bitcoin is incoming, so I'm excited to see how it responds.
Yeah, you're right, because of all the events that are happening. And, Bitcoin has a 21 million coin supply and demand. As more people enter the market and the demand goes up, that should boost the price on top of all the other uncertainties that are happening in the world, for sure. So what's maybe some of the main tokens you hold? Like what coins do you, we're not giving investment advice, but you're just describing, where you're coming from.
Yeah, so I have majority of Bitcoin. I also have recently been buying quite a bit of Tezos. So I'd say I'm like 80% Bitcoin, about 20% Tezos. I still have a little bit of Ethereum. That was like my original massive gain when it came to crypto. So I will always have a soft spot in my heart for Ethereum. And so yeah, that's mainly what I hold. I haven't dug into a ton of other altcoin projects.
What about Tezos? Why Tezos?
I do enjoy the staking aspect of it. I think it just complements Bitcoin well. And a lot of other people that I trust in the space are also quite committed to Tezos as well. So I'm a person that honestly, I don't understand like blockchain at this crazy in-depth level. So I just go off of a lot of different people in the space that I trust.
Yeah, I get it. That is a big appeal of Tezos. For those that are tuning in that maybe don't have the context, there's proof of work, which is what Bitcoin uses with the mining capabilities, and there's proof of stake, where you hold the coins and you choose to not, sell them, and by you keeping them in the account, they'll pay you an interest for holding them. So you're gaining more of the tokens by just not selling them, right? So it's like a checking account, right? Are we on the same page? And that's kind of the appeal you're saying?
Absolutely, yeah. So you could also see it from the perspective of, people are incentivized to stake it and to hold it. So you kind of anticipate less major price fluctuations in terms of, massive sell-offs.
You're right, because people are incentivized to hold it, it's an interesting theory in economics that seems to be really playing out. And it seems like that's where all the coins are going to these days, because it's way more logical. And the mining kind of has some, environmental impact to, it's that kind of goes into it. So that's great. So you're more of like buy and hold than like a trader?
Yeah, I go through certain phases where I enjoy trading more. It just kind of depends on what else is going on in my life. But for the majority of the time, I hold, but I'm always trying to learn a bit more about reading charts and trading.
Cool. Is there like resources you'd recommend? Like if, let's say, somebody's tuning in, they're like, man, I thought I missed the train, and now your belief it's just starting, and I'm on the same bandwidth with you. I think the next 12 to 18 months is going to be historic. What happens? Obviously, that's just one man's opinion. What do you like? Where do you recommend? Like a friend comes up to you, where would you point somebody to kind of get some resources, or maybe how to get started, or?
Yeah, so Coinbase seems like the easiest way to get started in crypto. Not a place to store, obviously, long term. I always use a Ledger Nano S, but that's typically, a good place. But one thing I can say is I recently learned that Kraken, which is another exchange, will actually pay you a higher staking reward on Tezos versus Coinbase. So that's one thing there. And then I like to follow Tone Vays, who's actually very anti altcoins. He is just 100% pure Bitcoin evangelist. And I really like his perspective on the market, mainly because I feel like he's unbiased. And even though he really believes in Bitcoin, he's quite honest when he thinks that the price could potentially go down significantly. So I also use Tone to learn more about the sequential system, which is not a super common way to trade. But when I'm, dollar cost averaging in, I really enjoyed to use a sequential system that Tone Vays teaches. I really enjoy watching the chart guys when it comes to, entering and sometimes not very rarely or not very often exiting positions. So those are the two that I mainly pay attention to.
Nice. Yeah, appreciate the shout out. And that's interesting with Kraken too, so that appreciate you mentioning. What is Ledger Nano, and why would somebody use that? I agree, Coinbase, great place to start. I'll put that in the notes. That's a great, easy entry, pretty simple to check, put your checking account, signed up with it, and you can be in business just quickly. And it's US based, one of the biggest in the world. There's a lot of credibility and security behind it. However, I think what you're alluding to is a big point, because so tell us a little bit more about Ledger Nano and why you use it.
Yeah, really quickly, I do want to touch on that once you create a Coinbase account, you can use your same email and password and log into Coinbase Pro. And when you purchase through Coinbase Pro, you're actually going to pay a lot less in fees. So that's something I want to mention as well. But when it comes to a Ledger Nano, so for example, on Coinbase, if you have your coins on Coinbase, you technically don't have full control. You're giving all the control to Coinbase, which is not nearly as secure, and you just, they're the ones that are responsible for your coins. But when you use a Ledger Nano S, basically you're storing your coins offline, and it is all in your control. So you are 100% responsible and have full control, because you could try to, for example, this has never happened to me, but withdraw your coins on Coinbase and the transaction might not go through. Those coins might not actually be there, because we really don't know if these exchanges are like fractional reserve at any level. So with the Ledger Nano S, you have full control. You are fully responsible for your coins. And it's just a safer way to store coins. And you can store more than just Bitcoin on a Ledger Nano S. They have quite a big range of different coins you can store.
Yep. We're on the same page. Coinbase is like a centralized company, so you have to put your trust in that they'll, comply and deliver, versus Ledger Nano, as you're saying, it's kind of almost like putting your cash under your bed or something like that, or you're controlling your keys, which public and private keys are another theme we could talk about, but things to research as if you're looking to get in and understand. So good. Let's pivot. Let's jump into fasting. I mean, that's your passion. That's your current YouTube project. And where first of all, where does somebody find you that is interested in learning more?
Yeah, so the majority of the content I produce on fasting is on YouTube. So if you just type in Mariah Vitoria, my channel will pop up. I also repost a lot, the majority of my videos on Steemit as well, but I would say YouTube might be the easiest way, and it's not as delayed there. So yeah, that's the place. And so yeah, it all started. I was actually originally making videos about Puerto Rico, and it was tough. It was a tough subject to talk about and grow a big audience from. Kind of felt like I was spinning my wheels a little bit. And I kind of lost the passion because there was also less of an interest, as the height of the interest with Puerto Rico kind of seemed when crypto was at its all-time highs, and it was slowly fading. So I had started looking into and experimenting with the ketogenic diet. And that led me to intermittent fasting. It led me to OMAD. It led me to prolonged fasting. So when I decided to start a 30-day water-only fast, I made the choice just to use my original channel and start posting there. And I ended up gaining the traction and building the audience that I was hoping for.
That's great. Okay. Yeah. So walk us through one of your first fasts. It was like 54 days or something crazy. It was water. Like what was the story on that?
Yeah, so it progressed. So I started with keto, and that put me in, a fat burning state. And then that led me to 1 meal a day. So I was, pretty much eating keto, 1 meal a day. Then I started experimenting with like a 48-hour fast. And I was like, oh, this isn't too bad. It was the first time in my life that I have ever gone a full day without eating. And then I progressed to a 72-hour fast. And then it had been a period of time where I'm like, I'm only eating once a day. I'm eating keto, and I actually don't even feel hungry when I'm eating. I want to know how long it would take for me to feel true hunger, because supposedly true hunger is felt in the esophagus, not technically like in your stomach. So that was something that I wanted to experience it for a lot of reasons, because I felt like I had never experienced it in my life. I felt like I was just always eating when I wasn't necessarily hunger. And I thought it would be a valuable thing to feel and understand, just because I know that hunger occurs throughout the US, throughout the entire world. It is a big issue. And so just kind of almost feeling for a split second what it's like to be those people that have to feel true, genuine hunger.
Interesting. Got it. And so how did you feel as you went through a 54-day water-only fast?
So the first couple of days were challenging because I also had to get off coffee at the same time. So I was experiencing some pretty intense headaches on that day number 1. And then day number 3, my body actually started aching, which is something that when I do fast now on day 3, I always feel that aching. But for me, I actually believe that it's part of the healing process, because I felt the aches more severely in places where I've had past injuries. So it almost felt like it was like a part of the healing process. And then on day 4 came the life-changing mental clarity that I had never experienced in my life. And it was just, my senses were heightened. I could smell better. I could see better. I could hear better. Like I had to lower all the volume on all my devices. So all my senses really came into play. And that happens because during the time of when we had to actually hunt our own food, if you haven't eaten that many days, that's your body giving you basically the extra boost to be able to hunt down that lion and eat it. So I experienced every day kind of felt the same between day like 5 and day 45. And like I said, I originally had planned to go 30 days, but once I hit day 30, I'm just like, I'm not really hungry and I really want to feel true hunger. And that hadn't came yet. So I'm like, well, I guess I'm just going to continue doing this. And so then it got to the point where the highs were really high, but the lows started getting really low to the point where I was too tired just to sit down. I had to start laying down. And I was in between traveling between Puerto Rico and California. And I was a little nervous to break my fast in Puerto Rico because I had never experienced the medical system before and I didn't know what to expect. And I thought, oh, maybe, breaking the fast here isn't the best idea. So I was traveling back to California for Thanksgiving and I decided to break my fast on day 54. And the night before I broke it, I actually felt the true hunger in my esophagus. It kind of felt like heartburn, but not exactly. And that's when I knew it was, time to end it. And throughout the fast, I was also consuming salt. So I would consume basically all your electrolytes, pink salts. I was consuming potassium and magnesium. And I always knew when I wasn't consuming enough because I would start seeing some black spots. But on day 54, I started seeing white instead of black. And I'm like, I hope Jesus isn't trying to take me right now. Maybe it's time to break this fast. So that's when I decided to start consuming bone broth and ease my way back into food.
Got it. Interesting. So what has how has your sleep and food and fasting been impacted?
So, during the fast, I needed very little sleep. I was very awake the majority of the time. And so since the 54-day long fast, I've experimented with some other forms of fasting. I tried a dry fast, which is no water and no food and no salts. So I was able to do 4.5 days at one point there. I've kind of experimented with the carnivore diet a little bit. I've tried the potato hack. So the current fasting routine that I have been doing, I've been doing it for a little bit more than 2 months now, is alternate day fasting. And there's a few reasons why I like alternate day fasting is because what I learned during the 54-day long fast is I put my body in a position where it did not feel safe. And so my leptin levels were very screwed up. I was experiencing extreme hunger, a lot of weakness, mental and physical weakness, and just feeling extremely cold all the time. So what I like about alternate day fasting is that it makes my body still feel safe and I don't experience that extreme hunger anymore. What I like also about it is that I can really monitor my sleep. So for me, I always notice that I have these feasting days and I have these fasting days. And on my feasting days, if I don't choose as good of foods and I'm eating, more like processed carbs or sugar,
sure,
my body needs a lot more rest. So for example, like on my fasting days, I give myself the option to have up to 500 calories. And I'll usually choose like sweet potatoes or cauliflower, just because they're satiating, they're filling, and potatoes are quite nutrient dense. So on a day like that, where I have 500 calories of potatoes, I haven't set an alarm in the past year or two, so I'm able to see exactly how much rest my body needs. And so I'll wake up after 6.5 hours feeling really, really well rested versus a feasting day where I'm consuming between 2,000 and 3,000 calories, maybe some more processed foods. My body needs between 8 and 9 hours, and I'll wake up looking like I have aged 5 to 10 years, a bit on the puffy side. So one thing that I really recommend for people is to check in with just how your face looks in the morning. And I think it's most of the time a true reflection of what you consumed the day before. And if you have the luxury to not set an alarm and to track your food, I mean, tracking food long-term can be quite annoying, but just to do it for a few months to really optimize your sleep, your food, and I think the more that you document, the more you can learn about yourself. So I don't know if I'll ever get to the point where I'm like, I found the perfect routine for me, because obviously my body is aging over time and things are always going to change. But I try to document and keep as much data as possible just so I can make, the best decisions for my body moving forward. And it's something that I really encourage other people to do as well. because I mean, I have figured out a way to where I could save 2 hours a day of needing less rest. And on those days where I also consume a lot less calories, I can feel a dramatic difference in inflammation throughout my body. So I deal with inflammation quite a bit. And so that's one of like my motivating factors of always trying to just find the right routine and the right foods that work for me.
Interesting. Yeah, that's good to find that balance. So yeah, just maybe we're kind of wrapping up. What have you? So you have 15,000 followers on YouTube. You have hundreds of thousands of views on some of your videos, and everything's growing. What's kind of what have you learned from that experience? Like how are you? I'm curious.
I think one of the main takeaways I've learned so far is that there are not that many people on YouTube that are 100% transparent. And I share a lot of my failures. I am extremely honest with my audience. I share with them when I screw up and I make the wrong choices. But for me, that's just a learning experience for everyone. And with fasting, a lot of the people that talk about fasting on YouTube, they don't show the dark side. And I have taken a lot of time from the dark side of fasting and the things that didn't go well for me. And I've shared those, which was always not received well because people originally followed me because they believed in fasting. So I have gotten some backlash from that. But at the end of the day, I never learned about the dark side of fasting. And so I didn't anticipate the tough things that were going to happen. So just sharing the super vulnerable side of it, being 100% honest, and just taking the time to connect and appreciate every single one of my subscribers, I think has really built like this special community around fasting.
That's great. I mean, vulnerability is powerful. I've come to that conclusion in this season of my life. How has it affected your viewership or had more people become more sold out, or how would you describe it?
Yeah, I think at first people were confused and frustrated that I wasn't, putting fasting every single day on this pedestal, that I was showing the dark side. But I think after some time, I actually gained a lot of respect from people in always being transparent about what I do and what I experience. Because, I mean, just briefly, after the 54-day long fast, I experienced like some really tough mental health issues. And what I learned was that my weak body, which I had never felt so physically weak in my life, had really translated to a super weak mind. And it was hard to still share those experiences and be honest with people. But I think I just gained a lot of respect from my subscribers over time.
That's great. Yeah, I applaud you for doing that because, that's being real. And in today's world, like, how much is fake, right? Even our processed food that you were describing, like everything is not rosy and colory in life in general, especially entrepreneurial path. Like, if you're not sharing what you've had to overcome and been through, that's just not even real. I mean, on a daily basis, we're having to overcome things as humans, and it's us overcoming that, gets us stronger. So I applaud you for that. That's very brave of you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So yeah, we're kind of wrapping things up. It's been great. I think we've learned tons if you've been, tuning in, and anything else you want to leave people with on like the fasting or just anything in general?
Yeah, I think it's important to just not be afraid to experiment on yourself. I'm a person that, I'll read or learn about a certain study, but I know that my body isn't just like anyone else's. And actually, for most females, most of these studies are just the subjects are male. It's very uncommon for there to be majority female subjects in a study. So for me, I just think it's important to experiment on yourself a little bit. Don't be afraid to go 24 hours without food. It's actually quite powerful. And especially, we hear about potential food shortages coming up, with the pandemic that we're in the middle of. And for me, people, if there was ever a food shortage, I know that my body is capable of I could probably go like 90 days at least without food. So just having that tool under your belt and always experimenting and, biohacking and finding different things to just optimize your life and to be just more productive and just work at like your highest potential and your highest potency at all times.
That's amazing. Very good information. So again, you can find her at Mariah Vitoria if you're searching on YouTube, and she's got a plethora of different videos on this subject. And appreciate you tuning in.
Thanks for having me, Drew. I had a great time.
Yeah, you're welcome. Have a good day.
You too.